Yesterday, it seems that the row over Sheffield trees took a bit of a nasty turn, and it did, didn't it? Tree campaigners are claiming that they've been manhandled and assaulted, whilst the man in charge at Sheffield City Council has told the BBC that the protesters are fanatics who are using vigilante tactics. That just makes them sound cool to me, but I'm a Batman fan. Here to explain more is our political reporter Kevin Larkin. Kev, tell us what happened yesterday.
Yes, Toby, there were a few reported incidents yesterday where the dispute over this controversial tree programme in Sheffield all got a bit heated. The main one took place on Lismore Road, where a protester jumped the barriers into the zone around a tree and was then handled by the security staff employed by the contractor AMEY. But they weren't wearing any visible licences, as they're legally required to do. Now, we asked AMEY about the incident. Now, they said to us that the man involved had some scissors in a plastic bag, which is why their security staff got involved. However, AMEY have said that their staff will be making sure their licences are visible in the future.
It beggars belief that they didn't know that they had to do that yesterday. Everybody who has an SIA licence goes through all the training. They know they've got to wear them. That was unbelievable. The head of the project now at Sheffield City Council, he's used a bit of unflattering language, hasn't he?
Yes, Toby. Paul Billington, the Council's Director of Culture and Environment, sent text to us at Radio Sheffield last week describing the Sheffield Trees Action Group as fanatics and claiming they were using vigilante tactics. Now, some people may look at what we saw yesterday and say he's got a point with people jumping the barriers, but others, like STAG, have described it as peaceful direct action. Now, the Council have sent us a statement where they say the language is quite strong, but the Council says most Sheffielders will recognise the frustration caused by a small number of protesters, so no apology there. However, the Green councillor Alison Teal isn't happy, and she wants Paul Billington to say sorry for his behaviour.
I'd like to see him apologise for using that sort of language. I'd like to see him apologise for inflaming situations when really, it's the council's duty, I think, in this case, to try and mediate between campaigners and themselves and with the AMEY contract, and to try and bring a peaceful resolution to this rather than actually using bullying tactics and making the situation so much worse. I consider his language to be bullying, yes, I do. I think that his whole attitude and his approach is one of bullying. I've seen him stand over people on the street, actually, the way he talks to people. He actually adopts that kind of posture as well. I think it's really inappropriate for a council officer to be behaving like that.
And the Lib Dem group leader on Sheffield Council, Shafak Mohammed, also says he'll be raising this matter with the council's chief executive, John Mothersall.
Now, the council has said that the tree protesters are intimidating contractors and people who live on the streets.
Yes, and that's why Paul Billington was texting us to say that residents were being intimidated by members of the Sheffield Trees Action Group. So on Friday, I went down to Abbeydale Park Rise to check it out for myself, and I asked the people living there if they're intimidated by the tree protesters.
They don't bother me. They walk up and down and say good morning, and that's as far as I go. There was one instance on Tuesday when they came, and a lady in a car before 7 o'clock in the morning drove up and down several times with a horn full blasting all the time, and I do object to that. In fact, I made my comments known to the person involved. But apart from that, we don't have any issue with the people being intimidating at all.
The protesters don't really bother me. They're just doing what they think's right. I don't know, it's getting a bit tedious though. It's 7 weeks this road's been shut now. So, I don't know one's right or wrong. It's just a nightmare.
Some people have said that they're intimidating people and annoying local residents. Have you had any experience of that?
No, I'd be very surprised if you could find any resident on this road that was intimidated by anybody that wanted to protect the beautiful trees on this road.
They have been round. They spoke to my neighbour and asked if they could come on her land when the tree was being felled, and she said no, and they started harassing her to say, why can't we come on your garden, why can't we sit on your drive? So yes, I think they are quite aggressive.
And have you had issues with them?
I've avoided them. Chickened out of it.
So, some mixed views from the four people there. I also spoke to a fifth man who didn't want to be recorded, but he said he supported the tree protesters and he hadn't had any issues with them. I also asked the council for logs of any abuse their staff or contractors have suffered, and they came back to me yesterday and they described teams being compared to Nazis, being sworn at and called scum, as well as being threatened. So, whichever side you fall on, Toby, it seems that this row over the trees in Sheffield is getting a lot nastier.
Well, it is, and more unusual now as well, I think, because in the past we've spoken to Councillor Terry Fox at one point, and then we've spoken to Brian Lodge, we've spoken to Councillor Jack Scott. Paul Billington, as a non-elected director of the council, getting involved in calling council taxpayers, fanatics and vigilantes. Sounds a very different kind of way of approaching the thing.
Yeah, it's not common for council officers who are supposed to be impartial and not getting involved in that side of things to use language like that. It's not something I've come across before. But I mean, I guess you could, as the council says, the statements are quite strong. And I suppose if you were to be charitable, you'd say that, someone who's dealing with it day after day after day, who, in their view, believes they're getting on with the job that they're legally entitled to do, gets wound up and frustrated by it. And maybe that's what happened here.
To be fair, council officers get paid thick end of $100,000 a year not to get wound up. And that's why they're there, isn't it? If we look at the AMEY statement, it's really interesting. Because what I saw on the pictures yesterday, all I've seen is pictures, was these security men with their faces masked and no badges. Now, in AMEY's statement, they do say, we are using a highly professional firm whose personnel are trained and experienced in the safe management of people. We are confident in their professionalism and will only tolerate exemplary conduct. Well, I don't know how they match that up with people with their faces masked and refusing to wear their badges. Now, SIAs, I've been around SIA all my life, I've had pubs, and if the City Council had a nightclub in Sheffield where the door staff, the SIA staff, were covering their faces and refusing to wear their badges, that would be shut down. If this firm is that professional, everybody who was doing that yesterday knows that they were facing 6 months imprisonment if convicted for not wearing their badges. Why have these? It does appear to be very confrontational, and I completely understand people getting annoyed with the protesters. And if a bloke's got scissors in his bag, why are they there? But that does look aggressive, doesn't it?
And I think that's the concern of the protesters, that this is getting a lot more heated, a lot more aggressive. And the council is saying the same. And, they've had the reports we've seen in the Sheffield Telegraph about people being masked and going along. And I think whichever side you're on, it's just getting a lot more heated and a lot more aggressive on both sides. And I think a few weeks back, we were potentially hoping that there might be some discussions, some mediation, something calming down a bit. In fact, Toby, it just seems to be going the other way.
Yeah, somebody calling people vigilantes ain't going to talk to him, is he? Thank you very much indeed, Kevin. That's Kevin Larkin there. What's your view on this? I completely understand the council's view, really, that this is getting on everybody's nerves, because I can see that. And if you are living on a street which you think is blighted by trees, you're probably really annoyed with these people. And, they are breaking the law. Well, they're breaking the High Court injunction if they jump over the barriers, aren't they? Get all that. But masked, well, for all you know, unlicensed, uninsured. They're not showing their badges. Masked men intimidating people just feels a bit smelly, doesn't it? I don't know. What do you think? 0114 279 6699. If you are one of these vigilante fanatics, give me a call. Tell me what it's like.
Travel news for South Yorkshire and North Derbyshire.
Sheffield's tree programme seems to have taken a turn for the nastier, really. There are claims that security guards manhandled protesters. And in a text message to BBC Radio Sheffield, Paul Billington from Sheffield Council described the Sheffield Tree Action Group using fanatics, using vigilante tactics. That's a council officer. Seems pretty unusual, doesn't it? The council say that AMEY workers are increasingly being met with intimidation from a small group of people who are disrupting the programme. The contractors at AMEY say continued disruption has left us with no option but to ask a professional stewarding company to help us keep people safe. We're joined now by Chris Rust, who's the co-chair of the Sheffield Trees Action Group, also known as STAG. Chris, good morning.
Hi, Toby.
Give us, from your perspective, what happened yesterday.
Yeah, so for the first time since last February, when huge numbers of police were on the street, AMEY have decided to almost produce their own police force. So they've hired a bunch of guys who, I guess most of them work as bouncers, and they're qualified people to do that work. They had on one street, I was on 8 or 10 of these guys, and a single man hopped into the work area and jumped over the barrier. Now, I'm told by AMEY that these guys have been told they can use reasonable force, and I've talked to the police about what reasonable force is. It doesn't seem to be, when a man's not offering any violence, when he's got nowhere to go, he's not running away, to jump on him and throw him to the ground without saying a word. And that's what's been happening on 2 or 3 occasions. Very quickly, very violently, these guys are just grabbing hold of people, throwing them down, knocking them about. I think probably they're used to dealing with violent drunks in nightclubs, and you have to be quick on your feet in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, the council would say that these are people who are breaking a High Court injunction.
Yeah, that's right.
They're illegal and they're putting everybody at risk.
Yeah. But actually the police would say, and I talked to a police officer last night about this, that you use a graduated response. If the person's not showing any sign of running away or offering violence, you talk to them. And then as they have 8 big men there and against one, they don't have to throw him around, don't need to knock him down. They can just do something in an orderly way, which they should be trained to do. If they want to remove him from a space, they can do that. They don't have to use violence.
They tell us, the protesters have been comparing the people who cut down the trees to Nazis. They've been telling them that they've been sworn at. One bloke was told, "I hope you die tonight." These are people that are out doing a job. Do they deserve that? Don't they deserve some protection from that?
This has been going on for more than 2 years. There have been incidents where particularly residents of a street where a fighting is taking place, so it's their own street, have really lost it. They've become so emotional, they've shouted things that they might regret. But actually...
Well, just shoot him was shouted at Brian Lodge when he walked out of...
Sorry?
Somebody shouted, "Just shoot him," at Councillor Brian Lodge.
I've no idea about that. All I know is that the people who are out every day on the street are uniformly calm. They do their best. I saw someone shout a few things yesterday because he saw his friend being beaten up. But, you know, that's not surprising. Of course, over 2 years, you'll get... And you've got lunatics everywhere. There's always somebody... We spend most of our time on Facebook shutting down people who want to incite people to do wrong things. On our own pages, we work very hard to keep that out of the campaign.
Tell us about the scissors. Somebody caught with... One of the people inside a zone yesterday caught with scissors.
Yeah, I believe somebody had a pair of scissors which he was thinking he might... cut a wire with, cut a cable tie with. That's all. And the police said that's not a good idea. Please don't do that. So we'll see how we go. But
so you can understand the frustration when we are dealing with a group of people who want to frustrate legal work.
Yeah,
and that's not on really, is it? When it's, I mean, what's so far, £250,000 it's costing legal fees.
And they haven't spoken to us. They haven't spoken to us. We've had various meetings at which the council will talk at us. Mm-hmm. And they'll tell us why they have no choice but to carry on with this thing. But they've never been willing to sit down. Talk is very cheap. We think they've spent £500,000 on fighting as the council, and AMEY something possibly similar. You know.
Of course, they haven't spent anything, have they? The rest of Sheffield spent it.
In the end, it comes out of all of us. That's right.
It's council taxpayers' money.
They're throwing our money back at us. Mm-hmm. We've said to them recently, look, it's not too late to talk. They've said, there's nothing to negotiate. We don't believe there's anything to negotiate. We think, actually, when you look at some of the decisions that are made, we're quite sure if you unpick them, if you peel them back, you'll start to find irrational thinking, mistakes, whatever. And quite a lot of these final decisions might turn out to be actually not pointless and not necessary, even in the contract. But they won't have that conversation. I think they're scared of it. So we asked them 2 or 3 weeks ago. We put them a plan. They said they'd consider it. And their reaction was to come back on the street with hired bouncers.
Paul Billington, as you say, fanatics, vigilante tactics. He doesn't sound like he's a man that wants to talk. What does happen next? First of all, are you surprised that this is coming from Paul Billington? He's not an elected representative. He's been the front man for all this. I think he's in a bit of a hole, actually, poor Paul. I met Paul. I've got to know him a bit, and I think he's trying his best. He came into this job quite recently, picked up this awful problem. He's got junior officers probably in the highways department who are convinced they're doing the right thing. He's got senior councillors and council officers above him who are clearly saying, well, we need to carry this contract through, and he's caught in the middle. And he sometimes looks a bit cornered, and he comes out with this stuff like this. I would like to point out, obviously, we'd love to have 10 minutes with Paul Billington as well as 10 minutes with STAG. He's just not, available at the moment. Paul, our door is always open. As is ours. Yeah, but he would say, Chris, and I really must put it to you quite forcefully, I think, this has all gone through the courts. Everybody's seen it's legal. It's a contract that's been signed off. The rest of Sheffield doesn't appear to really care. And you're breaking the law and putting people's lives at risk and costing us all money. you can understand their frustration.
We're not putting people's lives at risk. One of the great things about the AMEY crews is they're very professional. If anyone enters the work zone, they just stop work. They keep a watch out. The campaigners always make sure they know they're there, and everything is always safe. The highest standard of safety is observed in those situations. So there's nobody at risk. And this idea that, for instance, people are threatening and intimidating AMEY workers, well, last week, a lady in her late 50s, I think, a very small, slight lady, was approached by one or two big AMEY employees. They got very close to her, and she put her hand on the forearm of one, and he immediately shouted that she was assaulting him and called the police. So, we do have a problem here with people seeking to wind things up and make it look like we're a bunch of baddies.
Well, we do have a problem, don't we? Because obviously there is communication is broken down here. To be fair, they're still cutting the trees down. They're going to be done by the end of the year. Have you not thought about leaving it alone, packing in?
I don't think they are going to be done by the end of the year.
They're going to be done at some point, aren't they? They will come down.
Well, the longer it goes on, the more difficult and expensive it becomes. Perhaps people will realise that you can't just steamroller people. I live on a street, and it's not untypical. And it wasn't the reason I came into the campaign, actually. I found out after I joined the campaign they were going to chop down all but one of the big trees on my street. Now, those trees are there for the next 150 years, probably. They're healthy trees, and our health is really affected. Every year, more health information comes out saying how if you want to keep people healthy, plant more trees on their streets. Not somewhere else, trees where they live. Now, that means that if they take down those trees, I'll be dead before the new ones grow to any size. Before there is a tree canopy in place again, it'll be 40 years. Children will grow up without that benefit. We want new trees in the streets that don't have them, not just tearing out the healthy trees from the streets where we live for often spurious reasons.
What's going to happen today? We're going to have more of this rhetoric, of course, aren't we? We're told by the council that protesters are threatening residents. We're told of a granddad who said that he doesn't want his grandkids to come and visit him because of the masked people outside his house. Is that going to change?
We'll have to see what happens. People come out on the street. It's a very anarchic campaign in the sense that people do what they do, and it's individuals who come forward because they feel passionate. So I can't predict. All STAG is a kind of, we're a bit of a forum for all the local groups. I think that every time something like this happens, we get more support. That seems to be the case. We hope the council will talk. Meanwhile, we are pursuing other avenues. There are other things we can do. We might not want to talk about them straight away, through legal means to actually see if we can bring this to a halt. But the real problem is that we have both a government who insist on things being done in a certain way, which involves giving monopolies to big companies for 25 years over our streets, at very high cost. It costs us more to do it this way through PFI. And we have a council who seem to be unwilling to stand up to that. They may be caught, but they won't say whose fault it is. They won't point the finger at the government and say, we were stuffed with this. They seem to think that it's quite a good idea what they're doing.
Chris Ruster from STAG, thank you very much indeed for coming in this morning. If you want to comment on that, please do. Come on to us, 0114 279 6699. Texts have come in. A lot of texts have come in on trees. And you know what? I think we'll do it on the phone when we've got the opportunity to speak to the council as well. So far, I have to say, just about every text we've had, in fact, not just about every text, all texts but one, has been very unsympathetic towards STAG. There's a lot of kind of get a life. Toby, I'm all for saving the planet, trees included, but AMEY are doing this for a reason, not for fun. There are residents that want these trees taken down. Another one is simple, don't go in the cordon, don't get manhandled. This is nonsense. The protesters are wearing masks and breaking the law. They moan when they're thrown back over barriers. It's an elected council, let them carry on or vote them out. Council aren't talking at us, they're talking to us, they're talking at us. What a childish statement. This is all that's come in. What a STAG talking about, wasting time and money, protest against something more important, says this text here. And I don't necessarily know that's the case. I mean, you protest what you want to protest. Well, I think we thought it was interesting this morning because of the new tactics taken yesterday by the council. And I think we will talk about that, but we need to be able to round that off a little bit more. So we're going to try and get the council on later in the week. And besides that, if I'm honest, most of the texts are coming. Want to talk about books? So will we. Sinead Mayer Richards.
The Phone In with Toby Foster
on BBC Radio Sheffield.
Good morning, it's Toby at breakfast. It's BBC Radio Sheffield. Earlier on, we just heard it from Nick there in the news talking about the tree protesters and the seemingly more angry, more difficult relationship between the protesters and the council that's taking place right now. We spoke about it earlier on, and we spoke to Kevin Larkin, we spoke to Chris Rust from STAG. Immediately after the conversation, we got, I think, 8 or 9 texts in that were not sympathetic to STAG. I got one that was. Since then, obviously, it's gone on Facebook, and we're getting, I have to say, lots of texts that are very sympathetic towards STAG. And are coming, obviously, from their point. This is the Sheffield Tree Action Group. I did say that we wouldn't talk about it on today's phone, and I don't think we can, because we spoke to Chris Ross for 10 minutes today. I think we need to get the council side as well, and then we can put it open to discussion. If the council wants to come on tomorrow and talk to us about it, then we can do that. And that's why we're not doing it today, because we need to balance it. But I will tell you, as I always do, then lots of people texting in now are obviously pro-protester. 0114 279 6699 is the phone number. Text is 81333. Start your text with the word Sheffield. We're talking this morning about books.